Welcome to San Mateo, Sustainable San Mateo County's 4th annual advocacy webinar. We are just really happy that you could join us for this hour plus, packed with information and advice about how you can make a difference in your local community. So I'm Sarah Hubbard. I'm the Executive Director of Sustainable San Mateo County, and we're honored to host tonight's incredible panel discussion. Before we get started, I'm happy to share that we have Spanish interpreters on the call with us. And if you'd like to listen to the Spanish interpretation, please click on the interpretation icon on the bottom of your screen. It's the one that looks like a globe, and select Spanish. Or if you're on a mobile phone, you can open the More menu to select interpretation and select Spanish then. We'll be speaking a little more slowly tonight to assist with interpretation. So let's kick things off by having all participants answer a few poll questions. Now, these ones are easy because they're just about you. Your responses will help us get to know you so that our panelists can better address your interests and needs. Jill, can you put the poll questions up? Great. So first, we'd just like to describe who you are, whether you're a high school student, college student, community member, city staff or elected official, nonprofit staff or volunteer. Next, let us know how you heard about the event. And finally, whether you've taken any of the actions listed. Give you just a few minutes to answer. All right, let's see. We have 75% participation so far, so I think we can go ahead and close the poll and share the results, Jill. It looks like we have a high school student, a couple college students, several community members, 3 city staff or elected official, and 7 nonprofit staff or volunteers. We've also got people who heard about it through friends, clubs and newsletters, SSMC's newsletter. And this looks like a fairly experienced advocacy group. 7 of the 11 respondents have written to the local governments or met with the local government. 10 of you have attended government meetings, and 9 have spoken at a local government meeting. So excited to hear the comments and questions that you have during our presentations. All right, next slide. So tonight, we'll start off with a brief introduction to Sustainable San Mateo County, highlight the importance of local advocacy, then hear from our 4 panelists about their advocacy experiences, highlighting building electrification as a model for advocacy that can also be applied to other topics and interests. Then we'll have time for you all to ask the panelists your burning questions and finish things off with upcoming events and closing thoughts. Before we begin, I want to give a quick shout out to Peninsula Clean Energy for sponsoring this webinar and to Thrive Alliance for translation services. Peninsula Clean Energy has been a strong supporter of building electrification efforts. Their renewable energy projects benefit all our communities by providing clean, affordable energy that reduces pollution and creates local jobs. Their community grant program, which SSMC is part of, provides much needed funding to local organizations focused on climate change, building electrification, and environmental justice. Many of these organizations work with communities that have been underserved and subject to a disproportionate amount of pollution and climate change impacts. Available funding and support for home upgrade changes regularly, so their rebate finder provides current information to help all residents electrify their homes. We'll paste the link to PCE's rebate finder in the chat. Let me share a bit about Sustainable San Mateo County. So SSMC is a nonprofit organization formed more than 30 years ago to ensure that the region protects the environment while it supports an equitable and thriving economy. These 3 E's, the environment, the economy, and social equity, have always been at the core of SSMC's mission and vision. Next slide. Each of SSMC's programs connect to its others, like pieces of a puzzle. We provide information through collecting and displaying more than 100 sustainability metrics across 12 topics in our sustainability dashboard. We suggest policy and program solutions through our Sustainability Ideas Bank. And we provide a deep dive into one topic each year through the Indicators Report. Our Sustainability and Green Building Awards highlight local achievements and inspire community action. This year, we celebrated our 27th annual awards. And finally, we focus on advocacy. Our online webinars and roundtable discussions are a few of the ways we advocate for sustainability throughout the county. Now, you may notice the missing puzzle piece at the bottom of our logo. That's where we leave space for you, a critical piece of the advocacy puzzle and our focus for tonight. Advocacy is one of the most impactful ways that you can make a difference on climate change, whether through building electrification, transportation, air quality, or other concerns. Today's learning objectives are to understand how local governments influence environmental decisions and why community advocacy is essential in this context. Advocacy includes a range of activities done in support of a cause or policy. The environment is just one of the things people advocate for. So others include food security, affordable housing, childcare, transportation, healthcare access, and more. Educating others and increasing their awareness of an issue or need is one form of advocacy. Another involves community engagement, such as attending and speaking at meetings, sending letters to educate and urge action, and forming groups in support of your issue. And finally, advocacy can include drafting policy proposals and meeting with officials. We encourage all of you to ask questions of our panelists tonight and learn more about the advocacy methods you're most interested in. Tonight, our advocacy focus is building electrification. Right now, most of our homes burn methane gas, a fossil fuel, to stay warm, heat water, or even cook dinner. Electrification is the process of switching out those appliances for efficient electric versions. Because we live in San Mateo County, our electricity is already among the cleanest in the county or in the country, thanks to Peninsula Clean Energy. By going all electric, we effectively decarbonize our daily lives. Now, why would we focus on buildings instead of, say, air travel? Because in San Mateo County, Your city councils have the ability to influence building emissions. Buildings are often the second largest source of local pollution after transportation. We advocate here because city leaders have the direct power to pass REACH codes, local laws that go beyond state building code requirements. This is one of the ways that your voice can have an immediate, measurable impact on the climate crisis. When we talk about electrification, we have to ask, who is being left behind? Climate action is most successful when it's equitable. Now, first, let's look at the health data. Indoor air pollution from gas appliances doesn't affect everyone equally. Families in smaller or older housing with poor ventilation face much higher risks. In fact, children living in homes with gas stoves have a 42% higher risk of developing asthma symptoms. For many, switching to an electric cooktop isn't just a climate choice, it's a medical necessity. Second, we have to address the split incentive. If you're a renter, you likely pay the monthly energy bill, but you don't have the power to swap out an old, inefficient gas furnace. Without strong city policies and REACH codes, landlords have little incentive to transition off of gas. This is why we advocate to ensure that renters aren't stuck with rising gas prices and unhealthy air while homeowners move ahead. And finally, our goal is an equitable transition. We aren't just asking for new gadgets, we're advocating for city programs and PCE rebates that prioritize income qualified residents first. We want to ensure that the cleanest technology and the lowest energy bills reach the people who need them most. Advocacy is the tool we use to make sure sustainability isn't a luxury item, but a community standard. So we've invited 4 speakers to share their experiences with local advocacy and to answer your questions. I'll introduce each briefly and give them a few minutes to talk about their experience. Then we'll ask them a few questions and finally give the participants the opportunity to ask questions as well. Next slide, please. First up is Natalie Diaz. She is a San Mateo High School student and an experienced advocate. Natalie, the floor is yours.
All right. I have a slideshow, so yeah, next slide. Thank you. Okay, hello everyone. My name is Natalie. I'm a junior at San Mateo High School, and I'm also a youth climate activist. Next slide, please. All right. So I am part of 3 climate groups. I'm part of the Bay Area Youth Climate Summit, which is a youth-led organization that works in San Francisco. And more locally in San Mateo County, I work through Silicon Valley Youth Climate Action and 350 Silicon Valley to promote climate advocacy and work on policy. Next slide, please. Yeah, so when I started climate, I felt like there was an underlying expectation that climate is a really linear path and that the best way to make an impact is by being a participant in a group and then continuing in that group until you become a leader. Next slide, please. But through my experience, I found that it's actually quite different because I started off with an interest in medicine and lawyering my freshman year. I wasn't really considering climate as a career option in my life, but I had always been interested in Greenpeace, and I used to dress up as Greta Thunberg as a kid. So there was a little bit of interest in climate, but I never really considered it as a viable career option later on. But for me, that really changed when I went to a Bay Area Youth Climate Summit event, and it was at Cal Academy in San Francisco. And I was enticed by the prospect of free food and a lot of people, not necessarily climate, because I wasn't really sure what climate advocacy was back then. But I went to the summit, and what really struck me was the fact that the entire event was run by youth. And there was so much happening. There was a speaker from the Obama administration. There was tons and tons of workshops and activities. And it was really impressive just to see how much of an impact that youth can have, especially in the climate movement. And I also recognize that as a first timer in climate, I didn't really understand a lot of what was happening. Like the workshops I attended spoke about gentrification and redlining, and I wasn't really sure what that was. So after the event, I decided to get more involved because I saw where I could make an impact, which was helping to educate youth like myself who weren't super experienced on climate. And yeah, so that's how I got started in climate. And through that group, I actually continued. And right now, I'm co-leading the Bay Area Youth Climate Summit. And then through that, I got introduced to advocacy in Silicon Valley Youth Climate Action. And that includes like working on policies involving plastic and also campaigning through public comment. And then from there, I got even more involved through 350 Silicon Valley, which introduced me to more national policies like Make Polluters Pay. So overall, my journey was not very linear. I went to a lot of different niches and explored a lot of different fields. And currently, I'm quite involved in policy, more so than I thought I would ever be because I helped advocate for the REACH codes and also for protecting the Humboldt bike lanes, which a lot of students use to get to San Mateo High School. A lot of students at my school use. So it's really impressive to see how much of an impact policy can have, especially from youth public comments like mine. So that's what keeps me loving advocacy, but I also still like climate education. And as you can see from my map here, I've tried a lot of different things and there's still more to come. All right, next slide. All right. Yeah, so my advice to anyone who wants to get started in climate is that it can feel overwhelming at first, and especially if you're just starting out, you might not know where to begin, or you might not see how your career and your life fits into it. But I think the best way to approach climate is with curiosity and dedication, because no matter where you are in life, I think climate can fit into it. And what's really important to me in the current organizations I'm in is that climate makes me really happy. It makes me super impressed and excited whenever a policy passes or whenever I run a huge climate event. And I think that's something that everyone should strive for whenever they get involved in climate advocacy or whenever they try to incorporate climate into their lives because it's really important to find joy in what you're doing. Another really interesting benefit that I feel came from my involvement in climate was the fact that I'm really hopeful now because I have a community that is always putting out positive things and allows me to contribute to a better future. So I think that climate is a great way to get involved. It's a good thing to get involved in climate, and I especially think that public commenting is a great way to do this because it's a simple action that has a really big impact. And yeah, that is it from me. So I'll pass it on to Robert.
Great. Thank you so much. Never underestimate the power of food to get teens to an event as well. Um, yes, next up is Robert Whitehair. So he is a San Mateo resident who is very passionate about addressing climate change, and he's been a very effective advocate for building electrification. Robert, I noticed there was a question in the chat related to what a reach code is, so I'm hoping that in your discussion you might help clarify that for our audience. Take it away, Robert.
Oh, well, thank you, Natalie, for that great presentation. Thank you, Sarah. Thank you, Sustainable San Mateo County. Thank you, PCE, for sponsoring this event and Thrive for the translations. And thank you, my fellow panelists, Adam and Jeff, for this dialogue. I speak on behalf of standing on the shoulders of, grateful for hundreds of fellow climate and electrification advocates and activists in our county, including all of us who work to make advocacy, especially on REACH codes, which are building codes for electrifications, to make that successful. Advocates and activists on all issues, not just electrification and climate, stand out as participants, not spectators. As Judge Ladoris Cordell would say, we are upstanders, not bystanders. We are deeply engaged in change. We are deeply engaged in changing city codes to allow electrification and demand it. We bring meaning and depth to issues. We frame issues in a way that allows our representatives to act. Working with private organizations on REACH codes, elected officials, appointed staffs, and all levels of governance in this way, feature a very participatory mindset. We shape the future together, not as passive observers, but as active observers in the health and well-being of all our local communities, including our county, our state, and Earth. Advocacy work on electrification is about relationships, not in isolation, not just as individuals. For me, the key ingredient for starting this effort in San Mateo was starting with the big picture, that picture of the Earth behind me, taken in 1972 from Apollo 17 and reinforced recently when Artemis II sent back those stunning photographs of the Earth rising over the moon. All life is interconnected, interrelated, and interdependent. With this focus, we change our values for our survival. Next slide, please. Sorry, I didn't ask for the slides. There you go. Thank you. Next slide, please. Attitude is everything, I've found, when it comes to asking city councils to electrify. But this is personal, and I hope it resonates with you. When interacting with elected and appointed officials with anger, with hostility, I do them myself a disservice. We should be outraged about what is happening in the world and to democracy, but reacting with anger about too much gas in the air and all the other things that are wrong creates aid and distance and prevents solution. It prevents deep connection to all time, life, and space. Anger robs us of our power. Next slide, please. We are building community. Community is the opening through which we walk together to protect our planet and get our cities to eliminate gas appliances. As we did this, we built relationship, and we honored all those who showed up at 8 o'clock in the morning on a dreary, cold, rainy weekend to set up a booth at a farmer's market or a street fair or a public event, interact all day with the neighbors, and they go home exhausted. Those who stayed up all night emailing their elected officials, write letters, and reading complex, boring staff reports. My apologies to staff on that, but some of them are boring. Or show up at public meetings to comment on specific agenda items. So community for electrification is more than just a group or gathering of people. It was the complete interconnected web of relationships that sustained us, that fed our soul, that makes us who we are. Next slide, please. Don't be intimidated. We tried not to be intimidated. Bob Marshall, past mayor of San Bruno, reminded us that when people walk up the concrete steps of City Hall or push their way through the doors, they feel so intimidated they think they're going to jail. Something we all remembered when we advocated for electrification for REACH codes. Advocates add tremendous value to conversation and policy development. Next slide, please. A lot of what we did was just plain mundane stuff that we do, and we did out of generosity and love. This included preparing our comments and practicing in advance, sending thank you notes, which is very helpful. It included developing and agreeing among the team before going into meetings of what specific asks or requests will be made. It included phone calls, emails, social media contacts with each other and elected appointed officials. It included letters to the editor and op-eds. Next slide, please. Over a 40-year period, Joe Samidia, that's the Joe knows, Joe was an outstanding public servant, including time on the Board of Education. He has 13 tips, which are included in the chat and which will be sent out to you, along with a link to a meeting presentation he did. Last slide, please. So I'm often asked, how much time does the world have left? I'm often asked by my colleagues, friends, and officials my thought on how much time that's left. My answer, the situation is quite dire. They were facing a predicament that likely will not be solvable, but Martin Luther King said it best. Now is always the right time to do what is right. The attitude and way of working helps us strengthen the human spirit. Together we can. Thank you. And on to the next presenter.
Thank you so much, Robert. Such practical advice you're sharing based on a lot of experience that you've had. So our next two speakers have been advocates and are also current council members or mayors. So they offer a whole different perspective in terms of how we can relate to our elected officials and be effective advocates. Next up is Jeff Schmidt. He is a Menlo Park City Council member. Now, Menlo Park in March received the Green Cities Award from both SSMC and Peninsula Clean Energy. So he's got quite a bit of experience in the electrification realm, and I'm looking forward to him sharing some of that with us tonight. Jeff, the microphone is yours.
Great. Thanks, Sarah. Thanks, everyone. And I kind of laughed. I'm a lot like Natalie. I dressed up as a kid, not Greta Thunberg, but I dressed up as Batman, and so they're both kind of cool. I think that's a good thing. It I would say I don't have any slides. I just want to maybe share a minute about my journey to council. And as Sarah said, as sort of a climate advocate, and I would say I'm a junior climate advocate. I came to this pretty late, but my journey was kind of interesting in the sense that I was running a nonprofit, an education nonprofit. I had a little extra time. When you run things during COVID and COVID shuts everything down, you find that you have a little time on your hands. And so I started volunteering with one of the local advocacy groups, 350, and I wanted to learn about electric vehicles. So I just raised my hand and volunteered and said, I'd love to help spread the word. I don't know much about it, but I'm a fairly articulate guy. I can get out there, I can do the work. I'm happy to show up for things and all that kind of stuff. What ended up happening was I just got my hands dirty. I went to the Love Our Earth Festival. I volunteered for that community. I started learning about EVs. I started learning about building electrification, and really was visible with city council. I'd go to tree plantings for canopy. I think I came to an SSMC event. So I just started getting out there. And then really when the time came to for nominations to our city's Environmental Quality Commission, I raised my hand. And because I had known a lot of the city council members through volunteering, I got selected, which was great. And the commissions are a great way to get involved if you have that kind of time. It's a great way to kind of learn about this stuff in depth and understand the balance not only of advocacy, but of the delicate balance of trying to get it through City Hall. And so I think that's really important to start to learn that because once that happened, I was the chair. I learned the procedural thing. I learned how much comes in front of city council. And then I was fortunate enough to run for election, got my seat. And the first thing you learn on city, well, maybe not the first thing, but one of the first things you learn on city council is all the things you're passionate about and all the things you ran on and everything else, you don't really get to work on them very much. So, you know, I ran on climate, I ran on downtown vibrancy. Those will probably come up a handful of times on council. So that's one of the first things I wanted to share is no, try to learn what it's like to be on council. So I'd say one piece of advice, spend time going to office hours, because letting council members get to know you and who you are as a person actually really, really helps. And I think we touched on that, but I wanted to say it directly. And I have people that come to my office hours John McKenna, who's the chair of our Environmental Quality Commission now, probably comes once a month to tell me what's on the docket for the environmental stuff. And I think that's really important because John is keeping me informed. And he did that with the reach codes that Sarah mentioned. He said, this is coming down the pipeline. Let me make you aware of what that is all about. And so that's the second point I wanted to share is as advocates, you help us focus. We're meant to be your voice into the city, but because we all of a sudden have now this incredible breadth of topics, it's hard to get into the details like an advocate would. So John really brought me along on this round of reach codes and said, here's where we really need you to stand up and take a stand and help us push. And that was important because in Menlo Park, what we did was we asked the council to adopt basic reach codes, basic changes to the building code, but there were things that took us further than that, things that allowed us to take a half step ahead. And so John and the advocacy group that he was working with educated me. And that's the third thing. Find champions that are on council. You should definitely try to speak to all the council members to sound out where they are, but find your champions on council and bring them along. Let them know you, help us focus, but really find those champions and then just build a relationship with them. And so I was able from the dais to kind of argue and fight for staff going further, staff, stretching a little bit. And that's sometimes what we have to do as council members is ask staff, super busy city staffs to stretch and to move maybe further than the cities are comfortable with. And then as you're getting to know the council members, ask questions, explore where they are and what they're willing to do. And that's what John did with me. He said, like, how far are you willing to go? What would you push? What do you feel comfortable with? It was really a series of conversations. And John isn't a typical advocate. He's a commissioner, but I do that with advocates for housing, for swimming pools. I talk about, 5 or 6 different issues with the city a week, and all of them are conversations that I can then take to the dais and represent particular points of view. There are some points of view I won't represent, which is totally the prerogative of your council members. But most people will sit down and have a conversation with you and be willing to understand your point of view. So I think it's fairly straightforward with your council members. Like Robert was saying, don't treat it as a big formal dignitary, be scared kind of thing. It's like a conversation with a peer, and you're just asking them to consider your point of view and what you'd like to have happen. And I think knowing most council members in San Mateo County, you'll find a pretty willing batch of folks that are able to sit down with you and have a conversation and listen to what you have to say. So that's a little bit about me and a little bit about how I think you can interact with your council members.
Great. Thank you so much, Jeff. I think it is a helpful reminder to realize or recognize that council members are your neighbors. They are your community members. They're not necessarily people to put on a pedestal. They're like folks with a lot of the same concerns that we have. And I'm eager to hear what kinds of questions come up from the audience related to how to better relate to our council members. So last but not least, we have Adam Lorraine. He is the current mayor of San Mateo, and we'd love to hear your perspective on advocacy and maybe a little bit about the difference between activists and advocates. Thank you for joining us tonight, Adam.
Of course, and thank you very much for having me. It's a pleasure to be with you today. The first thing I'll just note is that what I will discuss tonight with you are my opinions and not necessarily those of the San Mateo City Council or the City of San Mateo. These are just my opinions as a resident of San Mateo City and County who cares about our planet. My name is Adam Lorraine. I am this year's mayor of the City of San Mateo. I was elected to City Council in 2022. And the main reason I ran was to help our city build toward a sustainable future. I was part of our Sustainability and Infrastructure Commission, but before that, I was a resident who cared about sustainability and wanted to support it. I attended meetings and events for groups such as Sierra Club and Sustainable San Mateo County, and then went to City Hall to see how my ideas could apply, or rather their ideas could apply in my city. So I wanted to talk a little bit about sort of the impact that such advocacy can have at the city level, and then a little bit about how folks can interact effectively with electeds. To me, the cities can model the way. Pilot projects can help cities walk the walk. One example would be in our city of San Mateo, we recently began a building electrification policy and program called Electrify San Mateo. And one of the elements of this is an electric first appliance replacement policy just in the municipal city recreation centers and other facilities that the city owns. So we're starting we don't have a mandate to replace to electric, of course, citywide at this time, but with regard to what we control at the city level for public facilities, we are taking an electric first appliance replacement policy, and we can learn from this activity how best to take next steps that work best for the community in a way that will work for everyone. It sets an example for other cities, and that's really important too, because this can sort of amplify the impact that can be made, right? San Mateo is I would call it a little big city of about 100,000 people. It's a lot, it's a decent number of people, but of course, we have a lot of people in the Bay Area. But if our city can demonstrate a way to affect change, other cities can take note. And of course, we look the same way. When San Mateo considers policy that's new to our city, we look outward. Are other cities trying this and succeeding? If so, it might be safer for us to try using proven elements. And great examples of resources that cities can use like this would be the Peninsula Clean Energy's model REACH codes, which helped a number of cities in our county adopt REACH codes that were first sort of vetted by a broader body that was looking out for things that worked for cities in our county specifically. The county works through the Board of Supervisors and a sustainability department to create policies that can similarly be adopted by multiple cities such as ours. And of course, the Sustainable San Mateo County Sustainability Ideas Bank can be used in this way as well. And I wanted to share a REACH code story, but I might save it for later because I'm already noticing I might run out of time in this initial period. So I'm going to shift to advocates and some advice there. I would say focus on shared goals and priorities. Jeff mentioned that you would like to talk to everybody, and I would heartily recommend doing so. Each council member on a city council can be a vote for you if you can relate to what matters to that particular council member. There are documents you can take a look at. You can go to city meetings to get an idea of where these folks are and what they're about. But we also in our city, for example, we have a strategic plan. It's a 5-year plan with priority topics that each member of the council and the city are working on at this time and in the next few years. We also, of course, have a budget that we need to be mindful of when we're working on new products, projects, and programs. So the good news, though, is that sustainability is in everything. And building electrification and REACH codes can offer multiple things to multiple council members. Maybe some council members are green champions like Jeff Schmidt, and they care about the impact of reducing greenhouse gas emissions. Other council members might care more about the potential health improvements that could be made if you replace natural gas that can create harmful byproducts within a closed home environment. Or maybe people would like to save money by using less energy and being more efficient in the home and potentially from switching from natural gas to electricity. So if you tell various elements of a story related to what you want to happen to better align with what folks care about at the city council or decision maker level, you have an opportunity to make your story resonate with different people. And I would just mention, please tell your story as well. So I put the and in there because I think it's important to do both, right? Connect with your council members, but also share where you're coming from and why it's important to you. Passion is powerful. We want to make sure we're hearing from a diverse representative body of our constituents. How does this item affect you, your family, your friends, your school, your place of worship, your neighborhood? We want to hear about that, and those sort of comments make an impact if they're made at City Hall or in a thoughtfully worded letter or email. So I'll pause there and thank you for the time.
All right. Thank you all. Thank you, Adam. That was very helpful of the examples that you provided. Okay, so I'm Molly Carter. I am the Communications and Outreach Lead for Sustainable San Mateo County, and I get the pleasure of leading us in the moderated portion of the Q&A. So I'm going to be asking each of our panelists a question. And then we're going to turn it over to your questions in the audience. So start prepping your questions. You can add your questions to the chat, or in about 15 minutes, in about 15 minutes, you'll be able to raise your hand and unmute. And, we're not a super large group, so, we can make this a little more intimate. And you'll be able to come off mute and ask your question. So let's start. I would love to start with going back to Natalie. And so what I'd love to learn about from you is all of these comments were super helpful. And I think you guys all spanned a nice, broader, high level ideas and motivations down to some tactical suggestions. But Natalie, I'd love to get a little bit more tactical with you. For a student who is passionate about climate, maybe they're early on like you were, they're feeling overwhelmed by the scale of the issue. What is the very first micro action that they should take, this week or next week, to really start their journey? What do you recommend?
Yeah. Well, I've done a lot in education and policy, but I would say one of the most impactful things for me was my first council meeting. I went as a public commenter, but any youth or any person who wants to get more involved, I'd recommend they just go and sit in. And I think it's really important because, at least for climate, it introduces you to a lot of people who do other things with their jobs, but they also are involved in climate and they still have an impact on the policies. So I think it's a really great way to meet your council members and the community who's involved in advocacy.
Great. That sounds like a very doable thing that people can start with. Wonderful. Okay, turning to you, Robert. I know we talked about meeting all of the council members and finding council members that you really align with, you share values with, but you can't always. Sometimes you meet with a council member who you have some disagreements with, but it may still be important to build that relationship. So I'm wondering if you can share a specific strategy for maintaining a relationship with a council member, even when you disagree, say on a particular vote. How do you push back but remain respectful?
Well, the thing that I found, thank you for that question. The thing that I found that when you work with council members or any elected official, it's good to have a relationship outside of just the official relationship at the council meeting. And one way to do that, the city of San Mateo has what they call the academy. And I attended the academy and I met one of the people there who later became a council member. And I was able to build a relationship and find out what he wanted. This particular council member was really a big fan of electrification. He drove a Mach-E, still drives a Mach-E Mustang electric vehicle. So I got to know what he was all about. And there have been times when that particular council member and I did not see eye to eye, but he's very respectful. I'm respectful when we have a conversation. And I just told him, I did not agree with that position you took, but I did it in a respectful way. It's what I said in my presentation. You'd go into that with respect and mutual admiration and mutual, that's a tough job being a council member. And you have to respect it. Jeff talked about the time it took, and I know Adam too. It took them a long, hard work to get where they are, and respect that. But at the same time, push back hard. And sometimes you have to find other council members who allies with where you are. So it's kind of a multifaceted thing. There's not one particular thing that I would do. Thank you.
Yeah, that's great. And I think what you're also getting at is this is a long-term effort. Yeah. This is not just go in, push your agenda item and get out.
That's right.
Yeah, that's great. Okay, well, we will keep moving along here, but I'm sure we have more to talk about on that. Jeff, I wanted to turn to you next because you were talking about, how you had specific initiatives that you ran on. And then you get into city council and you realize you have this broad plate of issues that you are responsible for as a council member. And I'm just wondering, so council members are often balancing these many priorities, while advocates come in having a very specific issue that they are requesting the council take action on. I'm wondering how you would advise advocates to frame their issue such that it takes into account the multiple priorities that council members have.
Yeah, it's a really good question. I mean, I think there's a couple of ways to think about it. One is, I reflect back on my own experience, and when I was on the Environmental Quality Commission, I had time to go deep on issues, right? I really did know what the next round of REACH codes was all about, and I would study that and I prepare for EQC meetings. And what ends up happening is you are not allowed to go as deep just because of the limits of the amount of time. And I guess as a joke, I should have show I printed out the last council packet, and it was 8 inches tall. And I know San Mateo, Adam does that on a regular basis, but like in Menlo Park, that took all weekend to get that packet, and it had nothing to do with climate. And so just the first thing is just like remember that we maybe used to be deep on something and we used to have the time to understand what was coming down the pipe, but you're filling in a major information gap for most council members just because they've got all these things coming at them. And so it doesn't mean I love to be buried in detail, and I'm not always the most technical of guys, so I don't need to know like point 4, point 2, point 6. But the second thing I'd say is put it in a summary way of talking about it so that I know what you want. I know how I can be of service and be helpful, and tell me sort of the high level things that's going to move an agenda forward that I care about, but maybe I can't speak as an expert from the dais. And the last thing to kind of leave you with is, and even if I could, even if I was still that deep, my fellow council members wouldn't have the patience for that. Because we also don't want our meetings to run until 2 in the morning, right? And so summarizing and really getting to the heart of what's going to move things from point A to point B and what's going to bring the latest information to that council member. It's a nice way to kind of cut through everything that we have to do as council members and help us really get to the heart of the issue so that we can kind of advocate on your behalf in a way. So that's how I would approach it.
That's great. That's great. Yeah, I mean, make it as easy for you as possible, right?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, yeah, like a typical politician, I could have said that in 4 words, Molly. But yeah, it's make it as easy for. It took me 100, but make it as easy for us as possible because we can't always keep our finger on the pulse like we used to.
Yeah, yeah, that's great. Thank you. Thank you for that. Adam, okay, I wanted to turn to you next. And I have a number of things to ask you, but I think we'll start with, one of the reputations that's out there is advocates are sometimes seen as annoying activists, if you will. And I'm wondering, advocacy can sometimes feel like complaining to officials. How can residents present a climate solution like building electrification in a way that really makes it look like a win for the council? And I know you talked about there are different benefits in it for different council members, for building electrification, whether it's saving money or, impacting the environment and greenhouse gas emissions. But in general, how do advocates really partner with and make themselves really an ally for their council members rather than coming in and just sounding like they're demanding everything and complaining about everything?
Well, here are some thoughts. One is, I think the main difference, I'm just gonna say for myself, maybe, the term activist versus the term advocate is perhaps divided in my mind between uh, trust, right? It's about trust. And I think what's important is if you're trying to advocate for a particular position on council with representatives of the city's constituents, are you taking into account, firstly, that what you're advocating for could in fact benefit the entire city, as an example, right? I think sometimes um, if you that's why I brought up the idea of speaking on what matters to different council members, not just because different council members may only care about one thing. Of course, they care about many things and the broader community. But I think by stretching in that way, you touch on a number of ways in which your position can benefit the city more broadly at large, not just a group of people who have identified something that they feel, for example, might be beneficial to them or that they think is important. So I think it's about Robert mentioned, I like what he said about attitude mattering and about building relationships with decision makers. I think the more you can, I'll say one thing too, which is in the city of San Mateo, I think we've really benefited. We've had a great tradition of being able to bring folks into City Hall together and having sort of a collaborative discussion. Robert mentioned, I think Jeff, everybody probably mentioned that, we're all trying to make our neighborhood, our community a better place. Um, and the way that folks who have come into City Hall for the first time can prove that to decision makers who are overwhelmed with, huge packets of all sorts of items is, I think, just being open-minded to the fact that there might be more to a topic than they may have come in with their current position. Uh, and if we can sit down together and have a conversation either off the dais, one-on-one, or as part of a broader study session at the council level, if I guess to me, I think if decision makers can get the sense that those who are advocating for a position are understanding those layers and being open to decisions that, based on the data and the findings, are in the best interest of our city, then trust is built, and we'll be interested in working together.
Great, great. Yeah, I think that's important to get all the issues out on the table early, right? And have an opportunity to discuss them. That's an interesting idea that you brought up, this idea that San Mateo has been able to bring groups together to have these discussions. Any advice, Robert or Adam, or anyone, how to bring those kinds of groups together and have those discussions? Yeah, Robert, please.
Oh, you're on mute.
Yeah, there you go. Thank you. One of the things I've found is that often I find myself going to meetings of other folks who have kindred spirit about the climate. That might be the transportation, it might be bicycles, it might be pedestrian, and building relationships and going to the meetings and find out what's important to them so that we can build a relationship, a community around common goals. That's been very effective in San Mateo. There's a lot of very active people in bicycles and pedestrians and safety and on all the rest of the issues, traffic and congestion. It's trying to find a way that if you think through it, the climate issues have an interrelationship among all those items and trying to find where that common ground is. So Molly, that's how I try to work, and how my wife Terry has tried to work in the community, is build relationships among kindred spirits.
Thank you. Okay, I'm realizing that the time is getting away from us, and I want to make sure our audience has a chance to ask questions. So if at this time, I don't think I think the questions in the chat have been answered, but I'll look back through. But if anybody wants to raise their hand, go off mute and ask your question, you're welcome. We can do that right now, or if you have other questions, you can put them into the chat. I'll just give folks a moment. And otherwise, we will continue with some questions that came in ahead of time.
And I'm
Also,
just glad
Molly.
Adam got the hardest question on that last round. So
Well,
well
if you
done.
might indulge me, if we're waiting for a question, maybe I could
Sure.
tell a quick story that I think is really great and sort of wraps things together a little bit it's about reach codes. And in 2019, the city of San Mateo had experience with some reach codes. So we had the benefit of some city staff really who I think were interested in trying to see what might be possible. They worked with some council champions at the time, got a first round of reach codes that seemed to work well. It felt comfortable reaching even further in this code cycle early as a result. So the second time around, we were hitting the ground running, so much so that it received a Sustainable San Mateo County Trailblazer Award in 2020 for breaking that new ground early. So that's a solid achievement that others, including San Mateo County itself and other cities in the Bay Area, took notice. Then they adopted and built upon the work that we had done, reaching even further. And someone named Robert Whitehair noticed and asked to speak with me when at the time I was on the Sustainability and Infrastructure Commission of the city about the possibility of getting San Mateo to adopt something even stronger in the same 3-year building code cycle as a result of the work that had happened in other cities. And together we had conversations. We worked with our city's sustainability coordinator who made it pencil out and proposed successfully to city council, not just to rest on their laurels, but to take that leadership position again. So that I think illustrates a little bit of the partnership between cities, watching other cities and what's possible, and the importance of taking a step forward when you can to allow other cities to try it. And I also just wanted to mention that this year's Reach codes are really special to me because some of us may know in the state we had legislation known as AB 130 that began to prevent the possibility of reach codes happening in our state. After the LA fires, there was interest in not making as many changes to the building code to allow for housing to be expedited in various areas. But a compromise was made to allow for cities that had been doing this work already, that had a general plan with goals related to this work, that had a climate action plan, that had goals to reduce greenhouse gas emissions, that had a track record like the city of San Mateo did of leading with reach codes. Because of that track record, we were able to continue to move in that direction. So I just wanted to share those examples as ideas of the power of advocacy at the city level to affect change more broadly.
And
Thank
I want to give a shout out to the young people, the students that show up at council meetings, Natalie being one of them. And she brings the people out. She brings her fellow students from San Mateo High and talks to the council. And the council does listen. I want to thank you, Natalie, because you were part of that too. Your group and you were part of that in this year and last year as we work forward. It's a good opportunity for you, and I just want to say thank you for doing that.
Thanks, Robert. He's been a really great mentor to all the youth, so
Did
it's
you notice that I photobombed one of your slides? Did you notice that on one of your slides I photobombed them in the back?
yeah, I put that photo twice purposely.
Thank you for that. I thought it
And
was
Robert, that's actually a great transition. I want to make sure we get to Cindy's question. Thank you for the question, Cindy, in the chat. She asked, when one makes a public comment, what happens next? Or, what I think if I'm interpreting this right, what happens from there? And Natalie, I would love to get your perspective on this because you've made public comment. After you make public comment, how do you make sure things continue to progress?
I mean, it's kind of up to the other people in the room and the council once you give your comment, because usually you're not the only one. So you kind of sit back down and then listen to everyone else. And then at the end, there's like a council deliberation, and then they make their verdict on the progression of whatever is being passed. But um, I think it's important to just be present in the room after you make a comment, just like keep an open ear, see what the council was interested in or what they were confused about. And then if the measure or whatever you're advocating for doesn't get passed immediately, it's important to like follow up with whatever you learned from that meeting.
Great.
Maybe one of the council members can speak on their end.
I can jump in with maybe a variation of that. I would say, two things. One thing that you sometimes see is groups come really well organized, but they say essentially the same thing. And I could tell you, it's good a few times, but then, there's this feeling of like, all right, we get it, right? So and it happens in Menlo Park with housing. Sometimes people will use like the same opening phrase, and it's like, all right, after the 50th comment, I get it. So that has some diminishing returns. I think the other thing is really the personal stories, at least for me, tend to make an impact. And we had something where we made a decision about RV safe parking ordinance, and it was really hard because a lot of members of the community that lived in those RVs came in and told their stories both in Spanish and English, and you could just see how hard this impact was on those families, and it takes it off of the page and puts it into like, I wouldn't want my family to be facing this decision. So I would really think through the personal impacts of stuff and how that relates to you and your personal story, because it makes it more effective versus just kind of reading verbatim maybe what a group gave you to kind of toe the same line essentially. So that's one way to maybe make the comments more effective and have a bigger impact.
Great. And on that note, we actually have a follow-up to this webinar. We're going to have an online workshop where you will have the opportunity to work through public comment and get expert coaching from a few of the people here, as well as some other current and former council members. That's coming up on May 20th. We're not done yet with our panel, but what I want to do, we have one last question. But before we get there, we have a couple things to offer to you. Sarah, would you like to take it over from here?
Sure. So let's see. We do have an exit poll where we would love to get everybody's input on their advocacy priorities. So we will post that poll now. Give you guys just a moment to answer the questions. And then we're also going to share a few resources. So the first question is about your interest in advocating on the local level. Rating that on a scale of 1 to 5. The second is, well, I should say 5 is extremely interested and 1 is not very interested. The second question is, how prepared do you feel, with 5 being extremely prepared and 1 being not so much. The third question is to check any of the issues that you think are important for local governments or even school boards to address. So we are getting some answers there. I'll give you guys a few minutes to review the poll and submit your answers. So based on what's coming in, it looks like there is a high level of interest in advocating at the local level, a moderate level of preparation, and as Molly mentioned, we are going to have a follow-up webinar or a workshop really, where we work with each of you in breakout rooms to prepare public comment and understand who you can reach out to. And in terms of people's important issues and what you value, It looks like most people are checking most boxes. We have a high number of people who have said climate change and transportation. Many others who have indicated environmental justice, greenhouse gas emissions, and affordable housing. And every topic has at least 3 votes. So thank you all for your input. I appreciate that. Now let me share some resources if we can go to the next slide. So all of the resources and event information we will send to everyone who registered for the webinar. So you don't have to take furious notes or screen captures or even copy the chat. We will put links in the chat. But we're going to host the follow-up webinar or workshop on Wednesday, May 20th from 5 to 6 p.m. We also have been hosting a youth advisory council. We're just wrapping up our first year, and we're accepting applications for our second cohort, which will be the 2026-27 school year. That's open to youth between the ages of 12 and I think 25. And then finally, SSMC is collaborating on an intergenerational climate roundtable where we will talk about some similar issues and interests, advocacy topics. That'll be July 11th from 9 to 11, and we'll provide details about that. We'll also send links to an advocacy template that you can use to help develop your own public comments about the topics that are of biggest concern to you. We'll send you some links to our advocacy webpage, an ideas bank on school climate action initiatives, and also make sure that you have the link to the PCE rebate finder that we mentioned earlier in the presentation. Next slide. Want to give another quick shout out to our sponsor, Peninsula Clean Energy, and our interpretation partner, Thrive Alliance. And I will ask our final lightning round question. So we don't need to show the slide at this point, but I do want to spotlight our panelists. And you'll each have like 30 seconds to answer this final question. If a resident can do just one thing this month to support an equitable transition to clean energy in their city, what should it be? Robert, do you want to kick things off?
I would suggest supporting Peninsula Clean Energy, first by helping them find and sell clean energy, but also helping us reduce our electricity usage. And more importantly, helping PCE advance what I call the direct link between electrification and a response to the climate crisis. I think for them, selling clean energy is a wonderful start. They've done a great job, but it's also just the beginning. Help PCE do even more. So focus every day on PCE. Thank you.
Great. Excellent suggestion. Thank you, Robert. Natalie, how about you?
Yeah.
What would you say?
So right now you might have heard that there are some transit funding cuts, and especially to Caltrain. I take it every weekend, but they're thinking of cutting it so it won't be there on weekends anymore. So if this is something that affects you, I think, and I think this is just a great thing for anyone, but there's this bill called Connect Bay Area that's going to be on the November ballot, and it helps to fund Caltrain. So I think it's really helpful if you can advocate in any way, either by voting on the ballot or like attending an event, signing a petition, and so on. So I'll put a link to the official bill's site on the chat, but yeah.
Thank you. That's great. Connect Bay Area is something that SSMC has officially endorsed. So we do also recommend that everybody on this call learn a little bit more about the challenges, and it is truly an equity issue. So thank you for bringing that up. Very important. Chef, how about you? What's one thing this month?
I'm going to do 1.5. I'm going to say
do?
the same with Natalie. I was out at the farmers market on Sunday gathering signatures to get that on the ballot. So if somebody stops you and says, have you got a second to say public transportation in the Bay Area? please at least listen to their spiel and maybe sign up. The one thing is, I think volunteer with a local nonprofit and be part of their work, because it's the easiest way to become part of a community that will add breadth and depth to the way that you advocate, and you become part of a group that kind of sustains you and keeps you energized. I mean, I think Natalie's part of many groups, and I'm sure that's probably one of the best parts of the advocacy work is being part of those nonprofit groups. So that's what I would recommend.
Well, it's hard for me to argue with that, and I appreciate the plug. Yeah,
Volunteer for
SSMC
SSMC. I
is,
should have said SSMC first, everybody else second.
we're not the best fit for every volunteer, and we can certainly help people connect with other orgs too. So thank you for that. It is very, very valuable. And that's actually how I got involved with SSMC initially, was as a volunteer. So, Adam, what would you say to close things off?
Yeah, I would echo what a lot of folks mentioned. To me, I think, firstly, you can spread the word about any offers and programs related that you come across to others. One example today was in our presentation, we saw this rebate calculator from Peninsula Clean Energy, right? That's something that all homeowners, all customers in the county could potentially look at and determine what works for them. And so if you can spread the word on that, I think that's one opportunity to allow people from different backgrounds and spectrums, income levels, housing situations to benefit from offerings and programs that are in our county. And I think, as Jeff, Natalie, others mentioned, there are other programs out there. There are other groups that are doing good work, and look for groups that resonate with you, as Natalie mentioned, because this is this is something you would want to do beyond just that one action you take. You would hopefully find something that resonates, and you would want to get up on other days to do some more. So look for groups, nonprofits that are that represent your community in some way, that do something for you and those who you care about, and help them. And I'll just note that Peninsula Clean Energy gives grants to nonprofit organizations and community-based organizations to spread the word. So and other organizations do as well. So you may get opportunities through your own group to spread the word about these programs beyond tonight.
Wonderful. Thank you all so much for being our panelists tonight. I feel like it was a very engaging discussion. I want to thank all of our participants for being here. I realize your time is valuable, and this is important work that we're all doing. So glad that you're all such a part of it. Be on the lookout for a follow-up email from Sustainable San Mateo County with slides and links to the resources that we discussed. And please do register for our May 20th event, following up the workshop to develop public comments. All right. Thank you all so much. Jeff, Robert, Natalie, Adam, you were great. Appreciate all your hard work. Have a good night, everyone.